Hey everybody, beautiful day here in San Diego. I've got the shirt on, barbecue's going, pool looking good. So it's going to be a fun Cinco de Mayo as we celebrate the taking of the Puebla in 1802, I guess. In any event, let's talk about recruiting. This, if you're thinking about law enforcement as a career, this is, I think, a super important video because I'll tell you a lot of what goes on during the recruiting process and the hiring process, so that you'll have a good idea. It'll be the the good, bad, and the ugly. It's not going to be a one-sided discussion that'll tell you how great things are. I think you kind of get a lot of that with the community policing stuff, how that's going to change the world and everybody's going to be happy and people will feel represented. And I just don't know if that's the case, just because you're still telling people what to do when you're in law enforcement. You're going to parties, and not as a participant, but you're going to parties as the person that says, okay, party's over, turn out the lights. And people argue with you. And the expectation is that if they argue with you long enough and loud enough, they'll win. So interesting problem. This week, a couple of different phases. The first thing I want you to really think about is who are the prime candidates for hiring for the position of police officer in the professional model, and then also later in the community model. I mean, a really important issue. I don't talk about the political model so much because we're fairly away from that. I think some small towns might do hiring in that fashion, but big cities generally do not. And you're better off to look at the political versus the professional. Once you establish that, to establish that, you got to look at what the issues are. What do you want out of a police officer in 2019? I almost said 2017. What do you want out of a police officer today? You're looking for, somebody that you probably would see in your basic superhero movie. You want somebody that has ridiculously good judgment, incredible communication skills, ability to read people instantly, and a person that can rise to the occasion of a mass shooting or a terrorist incident and perform impeccably well, ignoring danger and maybe their own really, really bad outcome. Let's be honest, those people are few and far between. Very tough to find. But when we talk about community policing and the way that we're hoping police officers go as from a societal standpoint, hiring is where it's got to happen. If you don't hire the right people, then you're not going to get the success that you're looking for. So that's the first thing that you should really take a look at as you look at the material, is who are we trying to hire, and are we doing that under the current hiring process? Those are things that are some qualities that are really, difficult, one, to test for, and then two, to find. And then how far down the road in those do you go, to bring people in? Meaning, what kind of accommodations do you make? Well, this guy's, he's a combat vet and he's been there and he's done all that. So if he doesn't have great communication skills, or he's got good communication skills but not great, where are you going to balance all that? Really, difficult kind of thing. There's also the concern that if you go out and hire, for lack of a better term, nice guys, that they're going to get themselves in a position where where they lose a confrontation, and it has a really really bad outcome. Um, so those are the first issues I want you to think about. Now, this, for you that are thinking about law enforcement, or in any capacity, basically, because the hiring processes are really similar. Um, this is how the process goes. Remember, when you walk in the door with that application, or when you push send on that application, that's your first view from the police department. And the hiring process has officially begun as soon as you push send. Now, the question becomes, have you done a good job on your application? Have you followed the directions? Have you filled it out completely? Do you have that one job that it just didn't go so well, and you were only employed for a month or two, and then you left? Either you got fired or somebody else, any of those circumstances. So now you, just leave it off and I won't talk about it, I'll deal with it background. Not a good idea. And people that are on an oral board are going to look at your application, they're going to see gaps in employment, and they're going to question you about them, and oftentimes they lead to someone not making it on to the next step. So most agencies, a written exam, you can find it on the California Peace Officer Standards and Training website. And you can see what kind of questions are asked. Basic English, it's GED level kind of stuff, but nonetheless, agencies want somebody that can at least put some words down on paper and not sound horribly illiterate. So fairly simple, but don't overthink it. You're at a university. You've probably got some skills, or you should say your skills should be considerably beyond that. But I still see a ton. Think to yourself, and nobody in here has to say, but how many of you have been have received marks on papers for improper capitalization? That's something that you're going to see. So make sure you work on that. Again, physical agility. Many agencies will hold this later because it's really expensive to put on a physical agility test. Traditionally, it was written exam in the morning, PAT in the afternoon. Then agencies said, well, why put all those people through the physical agility when it's so expensive? And we can do it with our top 4 or 5 candidates. If we're hiring 2 or 3, we can do that right before they go on to some of the medical stuff. So that, you may not see that as a first up money-saving deal. Again, the CalPost website will have a video on their basic standards, and they're pretty much the same. Now, I was looking at a website from Lawrence, Indiana, and they had had at least one interesting thing in their PAT. It wasn't a standardized test like CalPost has, but they required vertical leap, an assessment of vertical leap to assess lower body strength. 12 and a half inches of vertical leap got you in, 16 got you out of the academy. So you got a chance to do a 25% increase during the academy time. I found that kind of interesting. Okay, now comes the first interview. There's 2 types. One is a structured interview and the other is background. Let's take them out of order. Background interview is just that. You're going to fill out background papers because this is the place that most agencies wash people out. Providing you meet the MQs, minimum qualifications, which you'll see what they are in the slide deck. But this background interview, We'll go into prior drug use, arrests, uh, employment history, um, all kinds of all kinds of things, and it is a selecting out process. Now we're not trying to bring people in. We've got this pool, and we're trying to get rid of people. So consider it a selecting out process. A couple big agencies, LASD does that, does this. I think LAPD might, and then some other agencies throughout the state. Smaller agencies, under 500, you'll see them go with a structured interview. And this is the one that you've been waiting for, where you go to the, you have a interview time, and you sit down in front of a panel of 2, 3, 4 people, and then they ask you structured questions, and then maybe potential follow-up questions. First thing is, I know something about the city. I know something about the police department. Look at the police department's website. Are they using buzzwords like geographic policing, or have they quantified their community policing into a unit or into some other selection of words? I'd know those buzzwords. Knowing the population, not that important. Knowing the demographics, probably a bit more important. Understanding that if you have a city with a really wide background, Santa Ana is a great example. Santa Ana has some very affluent, very nice areas. Santa Ana also has some really difficult areas. Anaheim's another great example, East End to West End. Both Santa Ana and Anaheim have significant gang issues. Understanding that, that idea. So that's the first thing I would get to know. Second thing is ask yourself, what does a policeman actually do? What might they have to do? And some of the answers to questions are going to depend on the agency. One that I heard from a former student was they asked them if they had a call of, or he was working, he gets a call of kids playing basketball next to houses, late in the evening. What would you do? And, one agency, wanted you to pursue community policing type of approaches. Are there ways that you can limit the attractiveness of the basketball court? Turn off lights, have whatever lighting is there, have that turned off. There's a bunch of different things that could be done from a community policing standpoint that would not result in confrontation. Another agency, which really surprised me, was they said, but their answer is you went out, told the people to leave. If they refused to leave, you arrested them. Kind of an interesting approach, especially in this era of community policing. That might be one that you're going to ask yourself if that's a good agency, a good fit for you to work in. You're always going to see an integrity question. Somebody steals something, somebody hits somebody does, shoot somebody or something, and 5 guys say that's the way it happened and you see it some other way. Well, this is an interview, so we are dealing with a perfect world. So you may, I think the A answer on that is going to be that you stand by your commitment to integrity and you tell them what you saw, even though it's going to cause you considerable trouble with your peers. You'll see that. You probably see some sort of a use of force question, and many times those are set to determine whether or not you can take life. And this is just my personal advice to you. If you haven't thought that through a little bit, and understand it's a lot more emotionally difficult than it is on World of Warcraft or whatever those whatever the violent video games are. It's a lot more difficult when you do it in person, and it's something that sticks with you for a long time, the rest of your life. And don't go into that making those decisions lightly. Have a good understanding. Have a good conversation with yourself about that. And then this interview is going to be sandwiched in between two important questions. First one is, tell us a little bit about yourself. Go in prepared. You want to talk about things that you've done that set you up to work in this career. Education, work history. What type of work history? Well, you go, gosh, I've only ever worked at McDonald's. Well, that's perfect, because McDonald's is about customer service. Bring that forward. Let the people in the interview panel know that is one of the things that business does, and that you've been an active participant in customer service. Really important. Next thing, language skills. A lot of people that have language skills, they really didn't want them as they were growing up. They wanted them forced upon them in the family, and they wanted to speak English and like the rest of their friends. If you've got access to language skills, get on it now. Get as fluent as you possibly can. Extremely important. I don't care what language it is. I have seen the need for everything from French, Spanish, Farsi, Mandarin, Korean, Japanese, Norwegian, and Russian, and I'm sure I've left out a couple that are that you run into. So work on those skills. If you have maybe like a high school background in a language, it took you 2 years of language like you were required, you might think about getting in a job where you're exposed to people that speak that language, and that you can really work on it. And it's difficult to do, because the last thing you want to do is make the person feel bad or embarrass them. But the more you try and the better you get, you're going to find a need for it in the field at some point in time. So that's your opening. And then your closing, opening 90 seconds, closing 30 seconds recap, education, work experience, language skills, anything else that you think may set you up to be good in the field. I would avoid things like if you're a firearms guy, and you go to the range often, and you shoot a lot. I would avoid that. That's not going to really impress anybody, and it may also get them concerned about what your real reason is for working in the police department. So there's quite a bit on the slide deck about structured interviews, but that's the basic stuff that you need to know. Or I should say the basic, that's like the dirty secret kind of stuff you need to know. Most agencies are very similar in that. You may see what's called BPAD. I think that's pretty much died out. I know one agency in LA County still uses it, and that is where you are interacting with a computer, basically, like a video game to see if you have language skills, interpersonal relationship skills, things of that nature that the place may be looking for. Next step is going to be your poly. Polygraph is a 2-step process. Now, the first step is going to be the pre-poly, where you'll go into, more than likely, to the PD at some point in time before the polygraph, and you'll sit down with a package, and it is like 300 most personal, embarrassing questions you can possibly think of. I mean, just ridiculous. I shouldn't say ridiculous, but things that are very personal, and I won't even go into them. They're so personal. If you know somebody that's been through a poly and you're facing one, you might ask them about the pre-poly. And then that is taken by somebody from the police department and is reviewed to see if, in fact, there's no things that stand out that they want that they can eliminate the person, select out the person right then and there. The polygraph. The polygraph itself is not about you telling the truth at the time of the polygraph. The polygraph's about determining whether or not you told the truth when you did the pre-poly. So don't fudge on stuff. And it's much better to have some issue in your background that you can't fix, you can't change, and have it disqualify you early than go through this entire process, which is lengthy, time-consuming, and then find out that you are disqualified otherwise. So that's the polygraph. Background, another big package of information. Be complete. Do not leave things out. If you had a job when you were 16 and you worked there 2 days, be as accurate as you possibly can. So if you've lived in a bunch of places, you might want to start gathering information now. So when you get your background package, you don't have a background investigator who says, okay, here's your package and I want it tomorrow morning. And you don't have any information. All your employment history, transcripts from schools, places that you have lived, references. Have that information ready to go so that you can fill out a background package, because maybe they need to fill somebody. The agency suddenly decided that they don't want to hire in 6 months. They want to put somebody in the academy, and that academy starts in 2 weeks. So everything's got to be done quickly. And that may be the difference between you getting a job and not getting a job, is whether or not you can get that done. You'll take that information, you'll sit down with a background investigator and have an interview. And they'll go over all of it, the same stuff. And everything that you have on there, anything that's blank, don't do anything that's left blank. It's NA not applicable, DNA does not apply, something like that. But don't leave things blank. That just drives background investigators crazy, because then they start to think, well, I got an issue here. One thing I should talk about with polygraphs, really important polygraphs. You're going to get 2 kinds of polygraphers. You're going to get one, probably a retired police officer or used to be a police officer, and they're really pretty sure you're not telling the truth anyway when you start out. And so they're going to be very skeptical of your answers and really dig for information. The difficult part for that is that it is very intimidating. But keep your cool, don't worry about it. Second type of background or polygrapher is one who's trying to make sure that the information they get is accurate, that it's not inaccurate in some way, or there's whether it's lying or something else. They want to make sure that they've got it right. Okay, so we got you through polygraph, background. Next interview is going to be your chief's interview. This one is ridiculously important. And there's a quote on the slide deck about a chief saying, hiring is the most important thing I do. And I really come to believe that because it can change the face of your organization. A few bad hires can really cause an organization difficulty. I had experience with that, where hiring some people and they were laterals, meaning they already had prior police experience, came from a large agency, and they just didn't want to work. All they wanted to do was, we called them elephant hunters. They wanted to drive around in their cars answer calls for service, and make sure they were available when a big call happened. And oftentimes, when the big call happened, they were suddenly busy. Kind of interesting. So something to, for you to think about your chief's interview, super important. Know yourself. Know your background. You know, if you went to Kissimmee, Long Beach, and you played on the golf team. Sorry, there's somebody on the golf team, of course. But understand and think about that, and try to relate that to what you might be doing in police work. Any kind of team sport. Team sport, getting along with others, and competitiveness. The desire to win. Very important qualities, especially when you're faced with adversity, meaning somebody's trying to kill you. Wanting to win is really important. After the chief's interview, you'll get what's known as a conditional job offer. And all that is it just allows the police department to conduct inquiries into your physical and mental well-being. These are covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. What that says basically is that during the hiring process, you can't ask those questions. Only after you have a conditional job offer on the table can you ask those questions. Medical exam and the psych. Medical exam now through post is preset. There's not a lot of individual doctors' intuition or decisions. So you go to do your medical exam, and most agencies it'll be the same. They'll do the same tests. Post website, great place to go. You also, if you have color blindness, there's also a test that you can take. I think it's Farnsworth D14 or D214. I get it confused with discharge papers from the military, the DD214. You might take a look at that and see, because some people that have color blindness in certain areas can get waivers and actually get hired by the police department. This then goes to an agency, I think they're in Hawaii, at least they were years ago. They were in Hawaii, and then they would look over the results, and then a yes or no answer on that test. The psychological test. There's only a few psychologists or psychiatrists in California or Southern California that do psychs, or a few companies, and you're going to have 2 written tests that you're going to have to do. One is going to be the MMPI, and this is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, the MMPI. And with that, you're going to have to fill out this questionnaire, and another super long questionnaire. And it's to check for a bunch of different things. I want to say there's 5 or 6 different scales that they get when they run the answers through the Scantron type thing, as far as truthfulness and other potential issues. And then you'll have a clinical interview, and that means you're going to sit down with a clinician, with a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and you will be talking about your life. They're going to want to know about your life. They're going to want to look at the written assessments and have some discussion about that. They're going to want to know some of the things that you're about. So that's a long day. That's a very long day. And when I worked in Orange County, we used the psychiatrist was up in, it's at LA County City, not Santa Monica, but up in that direction. So people that were coming from Southern California had a long drive, early morning, on their way. It's a difficult deal. So once you get through there, those are the things that you're going to be looking at. So this is a pretty good thing for you to take a look at. Remember, the police department has two subjective looks at you. The first one is the interview. The second one's the chief's interview. And those are ones that you really have control over. Being prepared, understanding what a police officer does, understanding things are going on in the city that you want to work at. Those are really important factors that will really help you. If you go in blind, just going, oh, I'll just wing it, they're going to see that a light year away. They'll see it before you sit down. So, make sure that you're prepared. We talk about challenges for recruiting. And right now, there's a fairly significant challenge when it comes to the violence being displayed towards police officers and the desire and willingness of the media to put that forward so that everybody understands, everybody knows every time a police officer is involved in one of the, where they're assaulted. It's good TV, and that affects, because people think, well, gosh, I probably could be an accountant and make pretty good money. I don't know if I want to be doing that. Society is changing, where police officers were professional model, professional era officers. It was okay if you were aloof, if you weren't, out there trying to be friendly with everybody, if you were an enforcer. Now society, and from what I'm reading from your papers, you are expecting an awful lot from officers. You want that officer that we talked about earlier, that is, has all those community policing qualities, but then when it comes down to it, they're more than happy to run to the sound of gunfire, and that's a rare person. The other thing is economy. Good economy. People go, oh, I don't need law enforcement. I can go make money elsewhere. And oftentimes, law enforcement is an economic fallback for people when they don't think they can get good jobs, anywhere else. Another issue that you have is, as I put it in the slide deck, how hard could it be? Being a cop, how hard could it be? And those are, that's a challenge for the hiring process, to get people out there that feel that way and to select them out. So what are we going to do to expand the pool, the candidate pool? Well, there's an interesting idea. I would think for a large agency that may have 50 people, if they're going to put into an academy class or more, they might have more of this issue about, how are they going to select in the people that they want on a demographic basis? Is it going to be through affirmative action? Is it going to be through informal affirmative action? But many agencies are kind of stuck with what they got. They may get 100 applicants. They may have 20 women. They may have 30 Hispanic officers or potential officers, candidates. They may have, 15 Asian officers, 5 Middle Eastern applicants, not officers, but applicants. And, so they're going to be kind of stuck, and, with what they get and how they work through that. So, the last part is recruit training in this, the academy. And first off, I'll make this super quick. Go in fit. Make sure you can run 5 miles hard. You can do double the minimum in push-ups and sit-ups. Make sure you can do the whatever the 300 yard is, whatever the times on that are. Make sure you can do that before you go in the academy. So, if you haven't been in the, haven't been working out, haven't been in the gym, don't really care to start now. Even if you're not going to, start a hiring process for 2 years. Get in the gym, be consistent, improve your physical strength, improve your speed, improve your endurance. So when it comes to that part of the academy, then it's a piece of cake. It's a break from the day. You get to go for a run. You're gonna go do push-ups or pull-ups or whatever, and find a high school track that's got a pull-up bar, and start out, run a lap, as many pull-ups as you can do, as many push-ups as you can do, many sit-ups, run another lap. Do the same thing until you get up to where you're running. You can run a couple miles hard. You can do more pull-ups than you need to, more sit-ups than you need to. That way that's going to be really easy. The stress part of it, some of you will get into the academy and you go, this is not for me. And it's a good thing to know. And to decide that early. But for the rest of you, the academy is going to be just ridiculously hard, emotional for 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. And then suddenly you figure it out and you go, I can do this. This is not a big deal. That's what you really want to get to. So I also put a video up, which is from Austin, Texas. They did a series through the process, the academy process. This is just the first one. First 8 minutes of this thing you don't have to watch. I would suggest you don't watch it unless you're going to watch the whole series. It's available on YouTube. But it goes through the academy and the first bit of it. There's also another thing I saw when I was doing some internet searches, that Austin's being accused of mistreating troops, mistreating officers during the hiring process. Once you get hired and you go to the academy, you're a recruit. You're not a police officer. Most agencies will not let you carry a firearm. You're going to have a firearm if you're going to and from work, unloaded, locked in the trunk. Most academies will not let you bring ammunition on the grounds. I was watching day 0, first day of an academy at Rio Hondo, and some fool had ammunition with them and went home and was done. They were fired from the academy. So, make sure you follow the rules implicitly. Okay, so that's all I'm going to talk about here. It's been a long tape, but that middle part on the hiring is important. You're going to see a lot of that stuff in the near future, and if you go into the business, you might want to take notes so that you kind of have a feeling what's going to happen during the process and understand that preparation to all this is key. So with all that, I hope you enjoyed the class. I hope you got something out of it. I kind of like the face-to-face modality a little bit better for some things. This is one of those things because I go into a little bit more detail for those that are going to be hired. But I hope that you did like that. And for one class, got some different assignments where they had to produce like memos and try to make decisions like they were in the decision-making process in the police department, as opposed to like the conventional discussion board. Drop me a line, just a quick email. Let me know if you like those. That would be helpful. Or if they were too hard, then why? They make you work too much? Because I'm going to be really feeling sad that I made you work hard. Okay, not. In any event, I hope you enjoyed the course, and I hope I can get a face-to-face class here and see y'all.